Broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. It's time for Travel Safely with Bryan Mulligan. Travel Safely is presented by Applied Information, creator of the Travel Safely smartphone app.
Welcome, everyone, to Travel Safely, the business talk show bringing you the latest in innovation from transportation, technology, and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Bryan Mulligan, coming to you from the Subaru Business RadioX studio in Gwinnett County, Georgia. This show is sponsored by Applied Information, a technology company here in Gwinnett focused on using technology to save lives and improve traffic. Our guest today is Christy Brown, the Managing Director of the Atlanta office of Loeb.nyc, a very unique venture capital fund. So welcome, Christy, to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our topic of the day is the Atlanta business startup and venture capital scene. You know, the hot new companies, how big the Atlanta startup market is, and Georgia's got a reputation for being a bit sleepy compared with San Francisco and New York City. So we're going to talk about that. Christy and I share a common experience of entrepreneurship, which is what makes America work. So thanks for joining me on the show today.
Excellent.
So, Christy, let's start off with a bit of personal interest. The Christy Brown story. How did you come to be here in Georgia and get involved with Loeb?
Yeah, ironically, it's a great story because I'm a native Atlantan. I grew up here. My family actually arose from Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Wow.
If you drive through Snellville or Lawrenceville and you see the Britt, B-R-I-T-T name, that is my family. And so I grew up here around Emmon Park and south of town and Eagles Landing, and this has been my home, although I've had the ability and gratitude to live in many other places around the world. So Atlanta's been my home.
That's actually quite an interesting story, and I'll tell you why. As you can tell, that I'm not from Atlanta.
I thought you were from Macon.
Oh yeah, I'm from the deep south. Actually, I'm from Cape Town in South Africa originally. So any further south than where I'm from, you're in the water, you know. But nonetheless, when you deal with business people here in Atlanta, everybody comes from somewhere else. So it's really refreshing to have an Atlanta native whose roots go back into the original, start of Atlanta and how it's grown so rapidly over these last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would love to say I'm unique, but I have to say there's a generation about two under me that seem to be very native to Atlanta, and they're digging roots in and starting businesses here. So it's pretty impressive.
Fantastic. And so before you joined Loeb, what is your background? Are you a financial person? What do you actually do?
No, not at all. That's the best part of the story. I love to tell this every time I'm asked to speak on a panel or be live with people, is that I tripped into finance, not just through entrepreneurship and endeavors of my own, but I was an engineer.
Oh, wow.
And so, blocks and lines are very native to me. However, I tripped into finance many years ago. I started my career in a telecom company that went into a deep bankruptcy. So I learned a lot from that experience, and then joining into some consulting efforts, which also went through a deep bankruptcy. And after that, I said, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to start my own company. And I built a digital platform many, many years ago, and then took some time and then dove into staffing and HR and built my own company and exited that as well.
Oh, wow. Well, that gives you a great experience and resume, having done the entrepreneurship yourself.
Multiple times,
yeah,
for good or the bad.
Yeah, for good and for bad.
Yeah.
I often say that the difference between being self-employed and unemployed is only just one small syllable.
Yes.
And that when you write your own paychecks every couple of weeks, I say there's nothing to focus the mind of a man like the thought is to be hanged in the morning.
Right.
And that's the world of being an entrepreneur. So that took you into the venture capital business with Loeb. And so talk to me about Loeb in particular. What do you guys do, and what makes you different to the other VC firms around?
Yeah, we're actually not a traditional venture capital firm. So I think that's the point worth making. We are a private fund of our own. So we actually deploy capital and invest in startup anywhere from seed to series stage funding. And what makes us different is we're not pulling in investors into a fund that we're raising, meaning in a traditional venture capital fund, you would have limited partners and general partners that are entering into that with a certain cash basis. And then you deploy that fund across multitudes of startups or whatever your investment thesis is. And we do not operate that way. So that makes us a bit unique. We also invest and have the companies live in what we call a venture collective. So we here in Atlanta have built out space downtown. We've invested in the downtown ecosystem so that we can invest and raise upwards of 10 companies here in this marketplace so that we can scale and grow them.
Well, that's quite interesting. In fact, part of your program then is the mentorship, I guess, of these early stage startups where you get guys with a great idea but no idea what cash flow is. You can kind of help them through all of that and all the other things, the perils of early stage startups.
Yeah, I think the staple of what Loeb does and has done well in New York for nearly 20 years is establish this environment of shared services that surrounds and scales the company. So anywhere from digital marketing upwards through, helping the founding teams or founders with IP around something they've built, we invest in those shared services to scale them to the next level of growth.
Wow. So that provides a real step up for small venture capital funded thing, that they don't have to sort out a lot of their own infrastructure, that if you're actually hiring real estate and letting that out, and then they're also surrounded by like-minded companies that you're also supporting.
Absolutely, and that's the foundation. We want to surround them with mentors. We want to have that environment of compatibility, so like-minded people are attracted to other like-minded people, and they're all kind of suffering. They're not suffering in silence. That we are bringing all of those resources together to help them grow.
How do you deal with some of the challenges? The immediate one would be how do you stop people stealing each other's best people?
Yeah. Well, that HR thing comes up quite a bit, right? So that's probably the number one ask in the portfolio company CEOs is how do we get good talent as a startup? How do we retain and get great talent? And that's always the abundant conversation, right? Because as a startup, you're competing against all sorts of other companies, right? And even though more than 90% of the U.S. Business climate is, entrepreneurial and growth and on the rise, you still compete for that high tech talent and in different environments. So you're right about that.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest challenge of any entrepreneurial endeavor is hiring and retaining the right talent.
And getting rid of. Making good decisions.
Making good
right?
decisions, absolutely. Deciding when it's not fitting and when to let the folks go. It's tough as that is. That's a key part of the whole process. So what is the venture capital market like in Atlanta? Are you finding it easy to do business here? Is it growing? Is it buoyant? Is it struggling? What's the sense in the market out there?
Yeah, look, I couldn't be more grateful for the complementary investors that are in this marketplace. There is a long legacy of investors around here that have been doing this an awfully long time, who have been more than a handshake away of helping us and knowing what we're doing and finding the specialization in it to even refer companies that they've invested in over to us. So the climate is still extremely hot. Last year, 2018, and even in 2017, we did $1.7 billion of asset investment for Georgia across Atlanta in venture capital. So there's no shortage of companies here. The ideas are booming. We have support such as ATDC, or either incubators and accelerators.
Tell us what ATDC is.
I'm sorry, ATDC, which I assume everyone always knows is the Atlanta Technology Development Center, located at 75 Fifth Street, nearly on campus at Georgia Tech, and really. They've got a 20-year history of taking startups and just scaling them completely, beyond where any normal startup could go, if I can use the Star Wars theme on that. But
yeah. Oh, that's great. So what are the main business sectors that you're finding hot? I know fintech and health and all of these things, but obviously we're in transportation. So does that cross your radar at all?
Absolutely. There's this huge foundation of transportation technology on the rise. So if you think about the autonomous vehicle, or trucking, or last mile delivery, there is just an enormous amount of startups and companies that I'm seeing and meeting with that are doing all of these things right here around us. And so transportation, obviously with us having UPS and some of the big players that are navigating this market in their own corporate venture capital divisions, this is going to, in my opinion, continue to be our future is supply and logistics. And again, with Hartsfield being 30 miles away from here, that's from this office, it's extraordinary that we'll see more of that on the rise with technology.
Well, that's great. That's music to my ears, because one of the things in Atlanta we certainly do is we spend a lot more time in traffic than we should or want to. And so the hope is that these technologies can help resolve these things as we go forward. So it's good to see that the venture capital market has also got their eye on all of this. So after the break, we'll look at the hot trends in Atlanta startups and the venture capital and what Loeb does some more. So on that note, here's 30 Seconds with Sarah.
This is your 30 Seconds or Less with Sarah. GDOT has unveiled new plans for the I-16-I-95 interchange last Thursday. This interchange near Savannah, Georgia, will be a new turbine style, and is planned to be completed by 2022. The massive project involves a whole new interchange, additional lanes, new bridges, and much more. The turbine-style interchange will only be the second of its kind in the U.S., states GDOT spokeswoman Natalie Dale. The collector-distributor lanes that are a feature of the turbine interchange are said to reduce delays by 32% after the completion of the program. Back to you, Brian.
In case you're just joining us, this is Travel Safely with Bryan Mulligan. How to save lives, improve traffic, and drive commerce and health environment with our guest, Christy Brown, the Managing Director of the Atlanta office of Loeb.nyc. And we are talking about entrepreneurship and startup venture capital and so forth in Atlanta and Georgia. So what are the hot trends? What are you guys investing in at the moment?
Yeah, so there's so much, and we take a broad brush. I mean, that's the one thing to know about venture capital. Some are invested in med tech or med devices, and others are looking at transportation technology or HR technology. And we kind of paint a picture of we look for platform based. Scalable, growing companies. So we're pretty agnostic to any of that. But that being said, what I'm seeing locally in Atlanta, a lot of transportation tech, which we discussed earlier. We see a lot of marketing technology, which is how to better brand, how to get to the consumers faster, how to really use technology to do that. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how crucial data is becoming, whether it's big data elements of healthcare records, or even beyond of how you're aggregating your data to get to a central theme of what type of car you're buying. That those personas are becoming probably the most critical elements of what we're seeing trending. So the monetization of that and these big data companies are growing rapidly.
Yeah, so to attract your attention, does the startup have to be technology focused? Are you guys technology investors? Would you say that characterizes you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily hard tech. We're looking at platform-based technology, so we love things that have subscription services and technology that helps us make a change in a certain area of focus. So, selling consumables or things like that we can offer, whether business to consumer or B2B is attractive, and that typically comes with some type of tech platform.
And given that the market's so hot, can you acquire or invest in companies at a reasonable price? Is that still possible, or is it all so hot that you got to pay silly numbers for what you think is a platform and turns out to be an app?
Yeah. I mean, we're pretty sensible about it. We've got a rigorous metric and criteria that we run it against, and we have just extraordinary talent in New York that that are our analyst team that do a lot of the heavy lifting on that. So we don't really look towards companies that are pie in the sky or haven't really shown us traction in the marketplace. Even though we say we are in the seed to series range, we really want to see that minimum viable product or beta client testing derived and driven towards product market fit. So it's a sensible investment for us.
So that whoever is out there,
yeah,
you got to have some revenue. You got to have a real thing as opposed to an imaginary thing.
I mean, that's the preference. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, the near-term and long-term future in Atlanta for all of this, you see it just continuing to grow and continue to be opportunity for yourselves?
Yeah, we do, or we would not be here. I mean, it was a 2-year courtship. We had built a portfolio company in Atlanta called Study App. And through that experience, Michael Loeb found that this was definitely an environment worth playing in. And it's not just a sandbox for us. We are very critical in seeking out companies that will make investments in and stand up here in Atlanta.
So if you had to offer some advice to any young entrepreneurs out there who have got this burning desire, as I call it, to get out there on their own and change the world, what would that be?
Yeah. This is one of my favorite questions. No, I would never say don't do it. It's not for the weak at heart. I mean, I've done this multiple times. I've had a great success, a great failure, and a great success. So when you get that dichotomy of learning from your own mistakes, you become even more rapid fire at doing it again. And I certainly think, and we said before the show, I feel like entrepreneurship comes with a certain gene or DNA of, I'm going to jump off the cliff whether you tell me I can or not.
And you've got the parts for a parachute, and you're going to figure it out on the way down. I mean,
yes, exactly.
What could possibly go wrong?
Exactly. I mean, that's spot on. I mean, I would tell any young entrepreneur, especially in the Atlanta market where we see so many underserved entrepreneurs for investments, you got to put your head down and do the work and show, the community that this is an idea worth investing in, but also it's an investment in yourself. So you cannot go wrong anytime that you fundamentally feel like you're making an investment in yourself.
And how would they attract the attention of Loeb? I mean, do they give you a call? Do they pitch you? Do they attend these
all those things?
These pitch events?
Yeah, we're very, very founder focused, which means we do meet with every founder that applies or reaches out to us, just to at least source and figure out if this is something that we have the appetite to invest in or look at. So to reach us, actually, we have an application process that you go to. So it's Loeb.nyc/Atlanta, and it will take you right in to join our venture studio. And that application actually tells us a great deal about what stage the company's in or the entrepreneur is in, and they can upload their pitch deck, and then we take a few minutes with them, usually in a video call first, just to suss out or tease out, what their idea or strategy is for their business.
And whether your sense is
yes.
Does it pass the smell test of being for real?
You got it. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's great. So for the entrepreneurs out there who want to get some VC funding from Loeb, A, you got to have a real idea, not an imaginary idea.
Right.
B, you got to have a minimum viable product that actually has got some kind of either traction in the market or some kind of beta testing. And B, you've got to have a sense of that this thing's scalable to some kind of scale. And then you keep it for a couple of years, your investment, and then exit to the PE market. What's your exit strategy?
Sometimes we continue on. We don't necessarily have an exit strategy in particular, but we want to see something happen in 2 to 3 years, meaning we would like to see them, go into a liquidity event. Maybe we're raising more money, maybe we're not. And so we're just going to continue on scaling the company as long as we feel good about the trajectory of it. But that also gives us a 92% success rate versus traditional venture capital, because we do invest, privately, and we set the foundation around them to make them successful.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. In fact, it's very actually heartwarming as an older entrepreneur in this business that there are folks such as yourselves around who more than just want to invest and then hit everybody over the head with a 2x4, But you've got this
Right.
idea of nurturing folks to make everybody successful and end up with a win-win situation. So I'd really like to thank you for joining me on the show. I think it's been a great discussion and kind of motivating for the entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you guys having me.
All right, great. Today we'll be talking about the Atlanta business startup and venture capital market with our guest Christy Brown from Loeb.nyc. Christy, thanks for all you do and helping making Georgia and the world a better place.
Thank you.
Until next time, this is Bryan Mulligan signing off from Business Radio X, and travel safely.